Have you ever felt excluded? Felt like you weren't part of the group? Have you ever felt like you just weren't in the middle of things? I remember when I was in school, whenever it was lunchtime, every single lunchtime, I felt excluded. It was always the same situation. We'd go, we'd play football, and there'd be that awkward moment where you'd pick two captains, usually the two best players, and then they would have to pick who they wanted to be on their team. And so as they picked and they picked and they picked, there would be a dwindling group of individuals, and then there would be like me and this one other guy, and we would go either, to one team or the other. And I don't know if it's because of my amazing athletic physique why they didn't want me on the team, but I remember every single lunchtime dreading this moment because it was going to be another opportunity for me to realize that I wasn't quite the same as all of my friends. Now, if you've ever felt that way, then you know it's not a nice feeling, but perhaps the worst kind of exclusion there is when you feel excluded by the church or by a religious group of people. These are the people who are supposed to be loving and caring and kind and, like Jesus. If you feel excluded among them, then where do you go? The story I want to share with you today is from the Gospel of Mark, and it's in Mark chapter 2. And it's a story about a young man who was excluded and what happened to him. A few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. They gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door, and he preached the word to them. Now, you should understand that in those days, people did not live in houses like they live in today, where it's just a single house with one single front door and you go in and that's it. But rather they would live like in small compounds with different family members in different rooms, and there would be a courtyard in the middle, and then there would be a door to enter the courtyard. What Mark is describing here is that there's such a large group of people that they filled all the rooms, they filled the courtyard, and now they're even spilling outside of that door. And so in this kind of a situation, here comes this young man. Verse 3, it says, "Some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by 4 of them." Now, what's interesting in this entire story, we never learn this man's name. In fact, in the original language, he's not even called a man. He's simply referred to as the paralyzed one. What I've noticed, when people exclude others, they tend to do so by using labels. Black, white, male, female, liberal, conservative, straight, gay, immigrant, foreigner. Whatever terms we might use, we use these terms and it allows us not to actually have to get to know that person as an individual. We don't need to know their name. We don't need to know their story. We can simply look at them and say, oh, they're not like us. Let's not have anything to do with them. And so here comes this paralyzed one, this paralyzed person, and his friends are trying to bring him to Jesus, and they get to the place where Jesus is, and it's so filled with other church people, other people of faith, having a wonderful time, enjoying the preaching, and they don't even bother to make space for this young person who clearly needs to be where Jesus is. Now, what makes this story all the more amazing to me is that in Mark chapter 1, last time we talked about this, we learned that Jesus had been in Capernaum before. The first time when he was in Capernaum, the whole town almost came to Jesus, and he spent the whole night healing people, casting out demons. And so many of the people in this very crowd would have been only a few months ago unable to come to Jesus like they were that day. And somehow they forgot who they used to be. They forgot what issues they used to have. They forgot the way that they used to be excluded. And now they're just having a wonderful time, enjoying the show, and they won't even make space for this young man. Now, I don't know how you would feel if that was your situation. I grew up in the church, and I can certainly share with you that oftentimes I would have conversations with my friends at times when we would feel ignored or marginalized or not included, and we'd say things like, oh man, that's the problem with the church, that's the problem with the adults, that's the problem with the pastors, they never listen to us, they never want to take our ideas on board. And it was very easy for us to just want to go off to the side, sit by ourselves, and kind of just commiserate ourselves. But these 4 young guys, they were really radical. They were crazy. They were were so intent on getting their friend to Jesus that they actually climbed up the outside, go on top of the roof, and they start breaking through the roof to make a hole to lower their friend down into the very presence of Jesus. Now let me just explain what they've done, and maybe you'll understand the application for us today. They go up on the roof, which is a structure that is designed and built to keep things out, and they disrupt that structure. They break it apart, they make a hole in it, and they lower their friend down through the structure that was designed to keep people out. Now, you must imagine when they're doing this, that the people underneath, the people in the expensive VIP seats and Jesus, like they must have noticed that something wasn't right? So first some dust starts falling into the room, clumps of mud and straw and sticks, and this couldn't have taken them 5 minutes. Like they're going at this for half an hour, they're stopping and taking breaks. This is going on for a while. It's very disruptive. Finally, they get the hole open big enough, they lower their friend in, and they don't even say anything. They don't even say, hi, here, we're these guys, they just lower him in, and they just expect Jesus to do the rest. And here's the amazing thing. Jesus sees this and he responds in a very, to me, surprising way. They could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd. They made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it, lowered the mat the man was lying on. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, son, your sins are forgiven. Remember the story. Here is a man who is excluded because he's paralyzed. In that culture, they didn't have the understanding that we sort of have today about respecting people of all different backgrounds and abilities and genders. It wasn't a world like that. And so they didn't really perhaps even think they were doing anything wrong by excluding this individual. But they bring him to Jesus. The Bible doesn't say that Jesus sees the faith of the young man. It says that he sees the faith of his friends. And because of their faith, he says to this young man, not paralytic, not paralyzed one, but son. He calls him not just a name, but a personal family name. Son, and everyone's expecting it. I can imagine his friends are waiting for it. Yes, now he's going to do what he's done for everybody else who came to him. He's going to heal him. He's going to fix him. He's going to make him better, and we can go home and live happily ever after. But Jesus doesn't heal him. He says, son, your sins are forgiven. This is interesting because I guess when Jesus looked at this young man, the first thing he saw was not the obvious issue on the outside. Everyone saw him as the paralyzed one, but Jesus saw him as just another person who needed to have his sins forgiven, who was living under a load of guilt and shame and probably feeling that maybe he was in this situation because of something he had done. Certainly within his culture, that's the sort of things that people would say. And Jesus says, no, whatever you may have thought before, that's not true. You are a son and you are forgiven. There are many people in our society who are excluded. And even as Christians in the church, we have to be honest, there are some people that we treat better than others. But Jesus doesn't look at people like we look at them. And Jesus is looking for people with foolish faith, with crazy faith, who are willing to break up and disrupt structures that maybe in the past have served as a way of keeping people out. They have served as a barrier to keep things out, and maybe they were necessary. But I feel like now today he's looking for young people who are willing to break up and disrupt and make holes in places to bring people to Jesus who otherwise will be excluded. And yes, if you do that, there are going to be many people who think you're crazy. There are going to be many people who oppose you. There are going to be people who accuse you of being destructive. And there is a danger. Let's be honest. There is a danger. A person can just get so passionate about just breaking things up and destroying things and being new and being relevant and being edgy that you can do things without really a purpose. Here is the ultimate way that you can know that what you are doing is not just about you, but it's about something else. It's about something bigger. This young man comes to Jesus and he is healed, he is forgiven. If at the end of the day, the result of our actions are that people come to Jesus and they are forgiven and they are healed, then in my humble opinion, the ends justify the means. May you be the fools that make doors where there are none. May you be the fools that do not look at people based on their issues, but see them for who they really are. And may you come to follow God's own fool. For only the foolish can tell. Believe the unbelievable. Come be a fool as well.